What's up, Bolt fam? Last time we talked about guys on offense the Chargers should look at in the third round. Today, it's all about defense because there's a chance that they go Williams, Olave, Penning, or Green in the first round, so we should expect that next pick in round 3 to be defense. There's a couple different directions the team could go at corner, and I wanted to highlight two who could be available. One of them is Tennessee's Alante Taylor, and the other one is Houston's Marcus Jones. Now, the Chargers do actually have 3 connections to Tennessee. One of them is Isaac Shoemaker, who was a defensive grad assistant in 2020. Derek Ansley, who was the team's defensive coordinator and DB coach from 2019 to 2020. And of course, Brandon Staley, who was a graduate assistant there in 2012. Alante Taylor joined Tennessee as a wide receiver before switching to corner, and to me, that raw potential shows both ways. He's a feisty man coverage corner who excels when he can get his hands on a receiver, and to go on top of that, he tested very well at the combine. There are definitely some lapses in coverage. He's going to need to develop his mental processing at the next level. But to me, you add him to the Chargers, you develop him, you let Michael Davis walk next year, and you're set there. Taylor is 115th on the consensus big board, but has shown up as early as 77th on big boards, so I don't believe he's a round 4 target. If the Chargers want him, and they want to go with a familiar player, they're going to probably have to get him in round 3. Now, Marcus Jones is a completely different player with about the same height-weight combo as one Tyrann Mathieu. Jones plays or has played about 2/3 of his snaps out wide, but to me, he will likely be that slot, safety, extra DB hybrid type in the NFL. In 2 years at Houston, Jones has 17 passes broken up and 6 interceptions. He is undersized at 5'8", and teams do try to take advantage of it when they can, but when you only allow 3 touchdowns in 2 years, and you compare that to 23 passes broken up and interceptions combined, that's a ratio that I will take all day. He's a very unique presence and a high-end athlete who gives the Chargers a real Where's Waldo defender they can use all over the field to free up Derwin James. They just don't have a player like this that you can plug and play anywhere else. And if you miss out on Dax Hill, and I think the Chargers will pass on Dax Hill in round 1, I do think looking at someone like Marcus Jones in the 3rd round or maybe even the 4th round would be awesome. There's potentially a concern with his shoulder surgery, so maybe he does fall, but he's still ranked well ahead of Taylor on the consensus big board at 87th, so I do think he is kind of that 3rd round target. Moving on to the big guys, along the defensive line, you have 2 players the Chargers should be interested in. One of them is LSU's Neil Farrell Jr., and the other one is Iowa State's Ioma Uwazurike. I know Farrell Jr. didn't test incredibly well at the combine, but to me, there are enough flashes of all-around talent that I think he can be a legit part of a defensive line rotation as early as the first year. This is a guy that's battle-tested in the SEC, and Farrell Jr. actually finished first in our interior defensive line composite rankings out of 17 because of his production. He's 2nd in run stops, 3rd in run stop rate, and 3rd in pass rush win rate. He's an interior defender who can just give you a bit of everything. So if you need pass rush, he's a guy who's flashed anything from a swipe to arm over, to a spin move even, to a rip. And against the run, he's so quick off the line, downhill. You see a lot of offensive players almost hugging him because he's so quick off the line. But he can also flow laterally very well. He's a guy who can hold the line of scrimmage or even reset the line of scrimmage, either going downhill or laterally. He's just an all-around player, and I think the Chargers have met with him. Yes, they have met with him. And you could wait another round for him, and I don't really think they should take a nose tackle in the 3rd round. But I think he's a better player than last year's draft pick Tyler Shelvin, who went in the 4th round. So to me, if you want Farrell Jr. on your team, you have to take him in the 3rd round. Uwazurike is going to be a more specialized pass rusher than run defender in year 1, but I wouldn't let that deter you because what he's good at, he's really good at. Among our 17 defensive tackles charted, he finished 1st in pressures, sacks, pass rush productivity, and pass rush win rate. That sounds pretty good to me. And almost every other analyst, it's really strange. Everybody came together, and everyone just seems to be comparing him to Akeem Hicks, which, of course, great connection there between Staley and Rodgers. If that's who they like, and they like a guy who's like Akeem Hicks, I think Uwazurike is definitely in play for them. He did a real number on Trevor Penning, and he drew 2 penalties as well facing Penning. I really think those could have been pressures or even sacks. He's the kind of guy that he won't be your nose tackle by any means, although he did play some at Iowa State. But he's going to be your 4-eye, 5-tech defender who can win with anything from a long arm, speed to power, stack and shed, a rip move, whatever. He's one of my favorite players in this class, and his production alone makes him worth the selection. He is ranked 202nd on the consensus big board, But to me, there's no chance in my mind that he's there in the 5th round. And I think someone could use a comp pick 3rd rounder on him easily. So I think you got to take him in the 3rd round. But if you can get him in the 4th round, which would be, I think, ideal target for me, I think there's a home run. Now, I know the Chargers don't need a linebacker, but I do want to cover it. So at linebacker, you have a guy who should make anyone's all-ceiling prospect team. That's Penn State's Brandon Smith. Smith did play Will in 2020 before switching to Mike in 2021, and he has the capacity to play either. But because of how productive he was in 2020, and then looking at his film and his RAS score, I really like him as a Will in a defense that's just kind of see ball, get ball. He's a real dominant presence sideline to sideline who tracks screens, tosses, any kind of outside run as well as anyone in this class. I know the Chargers aren't going to take a linebacker early, but if they're considering one, Smith is a guy I would love to keep an eye on because of his standout traits. His range is really wild because he's ranked as high as 28th on some big boards, but his average is 102nd. So I do think he is easily one of the best 8 to 10 linebackers in this class, or at least fits in that 8 to 10 range. And so if the Chargers are going to look for a linebacker and you want to take some traits, you want to go with the standout traits and go with that ceiling, I would go with Brandon Smith. For edge rusher, I really wanted to go Drake Jackson or Nick Bonito here for edge, but they're 58th and 61st on the consensus big board, so I don't think they're going to fall to 79. I think your next best bet is Myjai Sanders from Cincinnati, and I would prefer Jackson or Bonito, but Sanders in the 3rd isn't a bad get. Sanders is a very productive pass rusher who has consistently increased pressure totals over the past 3 seasons. He has that ideal length that he uses to his advantage in both the run and the pass game, with some power also generated from his speed. He's got that length, he's got that quickness to win, and I think it pops the most on that stack shed or push pull. He does have to bulk up at the next level to hold up better at the point of attack and develop a bit of a more nuanced pass rush arsenal, but the Chargers are already pretty familiar with that with Chris Rump, so I do think they could take a chance on him in the 3rd round, but kind of like Uwazurike, I think the 4th round would be ideal. And last but certainly not least is safety. And to me, you can go with a variety of flavors here. I don't really think one option fits best. It's really just up to what Staley wants and also their plans for Nasir Adderley. To me, I think Nick Cross has the best highlight tape of the group, but also some of the worst lows. He's more that ceiling prospect. Kirby Joseph is pretty passive in run support, not my favorite there, but he's arguably the most consistent coverage guy. But Brian Cook is the guy I'm going to focus on here because I think you can plug him anywhere and get an instant impact player, particularly in the run game. Cook finished number 1 in our composite safety rankings out of 26 with top 5 finishes, which is all good ways here, in yards per reception, penalties, forced incompletion rate, passes broken up, interceptions, touchdown allowed, missed tackles rate, and run stop rate. So not bad. He's a clear cut ahead of the other 2 in my opinion. He's also 96th on the consensus board, so I think 79 could be a little bit rich for him, but I still would love to see him in powder blues. All right, is there anybody that I missed here? I'm sure there is. There's hundreds of players in this draft. Let me know who your favorite is in the comment section below. Take care, and as always, bolt up.